with these four areas, I really wanted to help, business professionals that, use a lot of the same principles of dedication and things like athletes, and they can take stock of where their energy level is at any one time. You go through and you say, how, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, okay, where am I? And then what are the sort of routines I can do right in that moment that can ignite that energy? I can just have energy on demand. So again, your off-field performance is not depleting. You don't get off work and you're just drained and you can barely get out of bed the next morning to it. You go right into these, what we call routines of oscillation, these routines that allow you to stress and recover without burnout. And so as we kind of talk through some of these, I'll share with you a little bit about, those sorts of routines that anybody can put into practice. It's just, your willingness to do.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the CM Mentors podcast. We're trying to be a resource for the next generation of construction professionals. My co-host every week is Kyle Grandell, and this week's guest is Alex Fichera. What's up, Alex?
What's going on, guys?
Alex is the owner of Intuito Group. I messed that up. You told me before, and I already messed it up.
No, you got it good. You got it.
So, hey, Alex, for the people who don't know who you are, you want to give us a little bit of a background of yourself?
Yeah, I'll give as quick as one as I can, but it's my background, man. There are so many different tentacles of where it goes, much like other people's. They ask you nowadays, like, tell me a little bit. It's like, where do I start? But
that's what I tried to give an introduction to Kyle, and I was like, Alex, you just got to tell Kyle yourself because I don't know what to do.
Yeah. I'll give a couple of, I kind of pick out three highlighting things that I think will be the basis for much further conversation. The first being that my first career was as a professional athlete. And if there's anybody listening that has kind of gone through that in their youth or up through their adulthood, training and becoming a professional athlete starts very, very, very young. It's sort of like, you don't want to get into the whole, like, how old are you when you were working? But I mean, ever since, age 8 and up, you're put into different systems, academies, schools, things like that. And so you quickly get the sense that it's more of a profession or career at a very young age, and it grows you up rather quickly. So going through that and getting great opportunities to play around the world, England, Iceland, play here at home, up here in Dallas, Texas, and transitioned out of that, became, naturally a coach. A lot of the times when you're a professional athlete, there are sort of, as you're training and trying to make it, trying to, scratch together some money so you can get the right nutrition or go buy your coaches or get the training or the facilities you need. So you got to work some different jobs, and it's sort of like you have two avenues. One is you go and train and coach maybe younger kids, or you get in with some camps and you work those sort of channels, or you go into construction. You do things in different venues, whether it's building commercial, residential, even landscaping, things like that. So I think that's why we have a lot to talk about. So as you're doing all those jobs and transitioning out of it, coaching was a natural fit. But I had a degree in anthropology, specializing in business anthropology, which is usually something nobody has ever met an anthropologist. So it's usually a cool conversation from there. But my sort of passion and love for business has always been there. And so for the last 15, 20 years, I've been kind of combining all those things to bring together Intuito Group, which is where we're a general contractor for HR projects. So, you get good subs, talented, qualified people. Companies are looking for things and strategy or how to improve people or, their processes and stuff. And so I like combining the things I'm good at, and that's where it landed.
Hey, Alex, so that all makes a lot of sense. What made you want to start a business doing it, if you don't mind me jumping in here?
Yeah, that's pretty daunting. Well, the business side of it, I did have a very good environment growing up. So my father was a venture capitalist, serial entrepreneur. And so, like, as kids, and that environment was how we were able to do all those sort of sporting activities and stuff. So the two channels of businesses he did a lot of creating were either training academies. We created, actual Soccer Players Academy, which was a training facility and bringing in teams and things like that. And then he also built large developments. And so you got the building construction side. So, business was always there. And I don't know, I just began to see kind of the same similarities that I would see on a sporting field and the business side of it. And it was hard to I couldn't separate the two. So might as well do both of them. So.
Very interesting. Cool.
So I know we want to dive in. I think our main topic's personal energy management. But before we get into that, I want to talk about business athlete. That's kind of is that a term you created?
Well, I would never take credit, definitely not an original idea, right? So I want to start off by saying that. But leveraging business athlete, there's been some other ones out there. You hear corporate athlete, some ideas like that. A lot of the work in the business athlete is rooted in decades of great mentors and studies and research within the sports psychologist realm and, neuroscience and a lot of other physical things, Dr. Jim Lur, several others. So it's really just a kind of a continuation of the great work that they've done, but brings, a lot of it is the sort of uniqueness of some of my own personal experiences, specifically within the construction industry, that allows me to use it and aim it in a different direction as well. And I do a good job kind of communicating it. So I think you get a different translation, no matter who you go to with it.
That was kind of the introduction Alex and Myler made when we first started talking was, just having a sports connection and sports analogies. I kind of like to talk in those too. And I think she saw the connection there. And so it's easy. I think we talked about this the first time we chatted. It was like the construction industry is sort of blue collar at heart. And so when you can make a sports analogy about it, pretty much everybody gets it instantly. They can see a complex topic seem fairly simple when you can compare it to something like that.
Yeah, you see all the sort of touch points and similarities, whether it's having to perform under pressure, long hours, physical demands. There are so many different ties where just sports in general and in the construction just have a lot of similarities. So, that's, I happen to think to keep it natural as you can. If something is that much of a connection point for so many people within the organization, we oftentimes, don't even leverage the fullest some of these things that are right there. So why not just dial it up a little bit, especially during times like this, where things are just uncertain in a lot of different directions. You want to go with something that's natural and connects to a lot of people.
Let's just jump right in. So the kind of topic I was really wanting to talk to you about for this is, burnout and personal energy management. A lot of all construction professionals, burnout something everyone deals with all the time, and especially kind of an entry level person. They're coming in, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Those guys don't get the best shifts. They get the bad side of stuff. So, you mentioned four kind of aspects of energy management. Can you kind of explain those?
Yeah. If I could step back for a second, just kind of share a little bit about, coming to the realization that this is a very important topic for the construction industry, especially young individuals coming in, because that's what the data says. And, for the longest time, and I've worked with some of the big companies, even small to medium sized construction, manufacturing, electrical engineering, and you get to work with some of the great young minds coming out. But as you said, things are happening really fast. The demands on them to do more with less resources. And the construction industry as a whole, I think you guys would agree with me that the needle hasn't really shifted on some of the health and wellness and in the sort of mental health and some of those areas within the construction industry. It really has been negated for a little while. Whether that's right or wrong, it's just the way it is. Technology was really pushing the industry along very fast. And gosh, in the last 10 years, everybody I talk to just says, the sort of backlog just keeps coming. So there's not really a chance to stop and breathe for a second, but this is what happens. When you stretch something or move something past its exhaustion point, you get into burnout. And so, It was very concerning to me looking at a lot of the numbers and still seeing that today are just not improving when it comes to mental health and the wellness of those in the industry. Why this isn't a bigger safety sort of issue in the industry. I know, OSHA certified. This is how crazy I get with my anthropology side. So, we really have to embed ourselves into cultures to understand them and get to know them at a deep level. And language is such a huge thing. And so, not that it was required at me at any level to go get OSHA certified, but I went and did it just because I want to know, what's the industry, what's the culture around this, what's the talk, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, 30 hours, man. I was in there. I was loving it.
Did you think it was a good training, the 30-hour course?
Well, it's yes. Yeah.
I had the same thought.
At the same time, I'm just a high performance dude. So like, I'm always going to say yes up to a certain point. Like, we can always make something a little bit better. But like, it was miles ahead of other courses I've done. So it was really good. I think it's difficult sometimes to do those things, whether it's virtually or not, and get the real hands-on. We'll talk about some of that in those energy components, like how you set up training to be really successful and very sport-like and using a lot of those tactics. But it's a huge safety. When you look at when accidents occur, the age range is like that. I mean, you're talking 24 to 35 is your biggest group of injuries that happen on a site. 60% of them happen within the first year that they're on site. And these aren't always serious injuries. I mean, we're talking, whether it's, having to go off site for some sort of medical reason, absenteeism, illness, these sorts of things. And like, it's really in the economic interest of a company to start looking at their employees, in a very holistic sort of way. And so one of the things I like to tell people that's been tried and true as long as I've been coaching and training individuals is that when people feel their best, they produce their best work, and that's never failed. So how do we get people to feel their best? Well, let's step back and understand the human being itself, use the technology, the things that we now have that we didn't have 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. We can kind of re-examine and look at our employees from a different light, add in some of the sort of environmental and cultural factors existing today, social factors, economic factors. And we come out with a little bit different approach to optimizing our businesses, optimizing our workforce. And that's what got me all excited about it, was just really I guess it's the opportunity for growth was what was, my sort of indicator was like, okay, there's a real need here. I connect with a lot of individuals, a lot of craftspeople in the workspace. So let's see if we can't move the needle on this. So the business athlete, that's kind of a long-winded kind of lead up to it, right? The business athlete is just sort of taking 15 plus years of diving into, training, understanding, using sports as the sort of baseline, the principles, tactics, and looking at how we can kind of extract that and apply it towards professional development. And energy management seems to be, you hear a lot about energy now. There's just, I don't know, it's out there in lexicon, it's out there. People, if I were bringing this up 10, 15 years ago in the construction landscape, I probably would be laughed out of a lot of rooms. Actually was laughed out of a lot of rooms with suggesting some of the things that I would suggest today. But that's okay. I mean, I know it, to work, and it's not everybody's sort of cup of tea. So you got to kind of wait for them to come back around and recognize some of these stuffs. But we look at 4 different dimensions of energy: physical, emotional, mental, and sort of spiritual. And we look at these as being, from an athletic standpoint, on-field, off-field performance. So what you do during your work day, let's consider a young guy coming onto site, clocks in, that's the performance right there, right? He's going to show up from the start to the finish, that's the performance. So just like me, game time, whistle blows, end of the whistle, good, you're done. Well, then that's when the off-field performance kicks in. And what we see from studies and research and looking at just general energy sort of output, flow, expenditure, and gaining is that that there are certain routines that allow you to optimize your off-field performance, which strengthen and actually produce your on-field performance. So maybe I'll pause there and just, I don't know, hear from you guys what you think there. Maybe something stood out. I don't know. I don't like to ramble on too much. I can.
No, I think you've got it's just like any sports. And when we were talking about this the other day, it really sunk in with me. And I've seen, as we're kind of connected, I've seen you make a couple, social media posts and stuff like that. But like, man, like we don't take enough care of ourselves off the field, right? At least, especially like I remember being younger and like, I'd go out and drink all night, party with my buddies, and then be back at work the next day. And, and it's like, you can't be at your best when you're doing that. It's like, if you're a pro athlete, you can't do that and show up on the weekend and play at your best if you're treating yourself like that. And so I think as you get older, you kind of mature and you kind of grow out of that. But I think it takes some maturing to get there.
Well, that was the sports thing. I mean, it was, you hear this a lot. I mean, talent will only get you so far. But I mean, when we're training and young and we're in our early teens, you're looked at as an investment. That's what these clubs, that's what these organizations are doing, is that, and that's why I was saying you quickly come to understand the business side of things very quickly, because it's not all about, orange slices at halftime type stuff. I mean, this is a business and people are looking to operate it like such. And, that's what I'd like to share with the younger ones coming through the industry, is that, how do you put yourself in the best position? How do you put yourself in the best position to be looked at as that investment, as that sound, not as risky type of investment? Because that's the look. I've met and coached and worked with all these business executives. This is what they're looking at. They're looking for a level of maturity, and they really are looking for some of the intangible qualities that come with it. And so
that's kind of a funny thing, which makes it's probably easy and hard at the same time, kind of for the same reason. But like, you look at, like you said, there's business and sport, right? And you're recruited from the time you're 12 years old to go to college, right? And especially the top ones. And they know who the blue chip athletes are and, all the sports, and, whether you're going to go pro in some sports or, go to college in other sports. And there's scouts and they're looking at this. But there's nothing like that in our industry, which is a positive, because you can make it yourself, right? I mean, you can, if you really put in the effort, you can stand out ahead of the crowd. But at the same time, there's no one going to come find you, right? There's no scouts coming, they're not coming to your college class and looking at your exam grades and saying, hey, this guy,
Yeah, that resonates with me, because I didn't have, is a lot of the things I did have access to, I had to go and fight for my own way. And we, one of the energy zones we talk about, the spiritual energy, is where you really end up finding your hunger. And I think that's I don't know if it falls into the vulnerability category of where people are, but we really have to ask ourselves, where am I driving my hunger from? And as you look out there, and there's a lot of talented people, and I'd go into these locker rooms, and sometimes I was just a kid and there were grown men in there. Grown men with families and kids of their own, and they're, these guys have lives and everything. And you look across there and you kind of question, do I have enough hunger? Is that, when the going gets tough and I'm going to have to go up against some pretty tough challenges, and that's, what's going to come here for most people. Where am I going to get that energy from? Where am I going to get that hunger from, that drive, that determination, that resiliency? And so I think not only individuals, but organizations need to think about that. And that sort of spiritual energy component is, what are your values? What are your sort of your purpose? And really dig in on that. But that's a tough area to go into. That's why most people don't do it. That's what I tell people. If you feel uncomfortable, that's probably an indicator you're headed in the right direction.
That's definitely a lesson I've learned, especially going through all this podcast and newsletter and all that sort of stuff. It's like super uncomfortable putting yourself out there and kind of showing that, but it's but I feel like I'm going the right direction because it is uncomfortable. But I'm gonna flip this on Kyle. So Kyle, obviously you own a business, you hire people, right? How do you find somebody that's hungry?
Hungry. That's tough. That's tough, especially if it's somebody that you don't really know. I mean, it's a lot easier to understand somebody that's like a referral, someone who comes from a trusted source. I mean, kind of with that off the bat, they're already starting out at a higher spot on your own trust meter. So it's a little easier to find that sometimes, I think. Like I said, with somebody that is a trusted or secondary resource of yours, but. Off the streets, just getting a resume on LinkedIn, that's tough. And the tough part about that is at the end of the day, and I know this from my own experiences already, at the end of the day, you don't know if somebody's going to work out until you really hire them, because there's plenty of people that can BS their way through the interview. They can put together a great resume. Mm-hmm. They may even have the resources and the references to back it up. But I think it's that getting them on board, getting them comfortable with you, having really good discussions about what drives them, what makes them feel successful, what makes them want to come to work every day. To me, that's a really key part. It's like what Alex is talking about. Is what motivates somebody, and I mean, there's all those different parts to it that he's talking about: the physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, and as leaders, we can only appeal to so much of that. But I think figuring out how we can align our culture to actually appeal to that is kind of the key parts there. To answer your question.
How long do you think it takes you? I mean, obviously it depends on how much time you spend one-on-one with them, I'm sure. But how long do you think after you hire them on it takes to understand who they are?
If you're asking me, I mean weeks. Weeks at least. I mean, at least it's an ongoing process, and the problem is that, I mean, everybody changes and grows too, which is usually hopefully for the better. But my company, we started using some assessment tools just to get the ball started a little easier. It's not necessarily something that we're going to base performance reviews off of, and then it's going to be the driver if the person gets put on the next project. But it's at least a starting point of understanding this person's characteristics and personalities, their do's, their don'ts,
Mm-hmm.
Which things set them off. We all do it in my company to help out with that. So
that's pretty cool.
Finally, because I think you're being really nice to some of these younger guys. They're giving them more weeks than they actually have. Like, that is to the point of them. I'm thinking that would be, people will give you a long chance, but they're going to make, human nature, they're going to make up some perceptions of you pretty quickly. So, on their side of it, you don't want to be caught off guard and doing it. And they'll give you some leeway and say, well, we'll see where this goes. But, not to come in there and think, I'll coast through the first 2 weeks, and then they'll start to show them.
Those are great points, Alex, and especially because if somebody comes on board and if they're dogging it right away, it's you can usually tell, especially when you give them some onboarding and they're having issues with it and they're not coming to you with questions, or it's taking longer than it should, and sometimes there's some organizational process problems with that, but.
I had a little more leeway, though, in kind of the last year or so, because that dilemma is really tough for an organization to really, when the manpower is low, and to really, what do they say, hire slow, fire fast, fire quick, hire slow.
Yeah.
You see a little more leeway, though, these days, just because, and I think that's good that companies are willing to give people the benefit of the doubt and stay with them and support them there a little bit longer. It kind of ties into what we're talking about, is just understanding that people come to the job site with a whole bunch of stuff going on. And to circle back, we don't know when they clock out and where they go and what routines they do and their energy, where, how quickly they can recover from night to night. We just don't know where that's at. And so sometimes we got to be a little understanding and give them some of that time.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, you don't know where they're going, but you also don't know what's going on in their personal life too, right? If they have maybe a parent that's in the hospital struggling, they may be leaving straight from work, going straight to the hospital, and of course they're not going to be there whenever they get back to work. They're not mentally going to be there, I guess what I'm trying to say. They could have
Things
marriage
shifted,
problems.
yeah.
It's just
The stuff during the pandemic, when people, had to take in other parents, had to take in kids, had to readjust their lives, work from home, kids not in school, all those things take a toll. And the kind of the traditional model of saying, well, I can only worry about what they do here on site. It's like, we can do better than that. And we should do better than that as leaders and as organizations, because that's what they're going to be asking for. It really shook things up. The way companies are now looked at, what they're being asked for. You can see it's sort of like a jockeying for position right now between companies and new hires and the whole labor market. It's an interesting tango, to say the least.
Well, and Alex, the part that you talked about earlier that really stuck with me was, how there's a lot of this attention around people at the executive level. And that's certainly true. I mean, I read a lot of books about business development and about, being in a professional industry and developing as leaders, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of it's focused around the executives, it feels like. And that's why it's so exciting to have you on here, because, this whole podcast is about getting out of that. It's about getting those messages down to all the folks, to all the younger generations, the next people. And so that's why that part really stuck with me about, let's put the focus where it needs to be.
Man, you were hitting some serious buttons with me there, because that was one of my biggest passions. Now, I work with a lot of business owners and executives, and I am one. But any business owner, they'll tell you we're not the easiest people to work with, right? We have a way we want to do things, and it's that's why we're in the role that we're in and doing things. But I have such a passion for that sort of middle management area, and when I first kind of transitioned over, that group had been neglected. Again, right, wrong, and different. I'm not here to make a judgment one way or other. I'm just stating what it is. And what it is that large group, the largest number of your employees are in that sort of group of middle managers. We're just not getting the same TLC that the executive level. And for reasons, budgeting, right, availability, hours, resources. But we have all that now, and we have ways of doing it. So that's what I, kind of came in to do. Is like, okay, we're going to drive this down from here, and take care of that group of folks. I'm glad you mentioned something about that. It's time.
that's awesome, because there's some principle where it's like the best engineer gets promoted to being the engineering manager. The best whatever the best programmer gets to be promoted to the programming manager. It's like you're the best of that trade. So they put you in charge of them all, but you don't have that skill set because you're an engineer or you're a coder, and so
many books talk about that.
Yeah,
those were always the very awkward conversations when I'm brought in to help do some coaching or some training of somebody who's maybe been promoted from a super into a PM, and I sit there with them and I'm talking with them. They're like, I don't even want to be in here doing this. Like they kind of just bubbled me up into this position here, and I'm like, oh, okay. We got to work on that first, right? But that was a lot of it. Was just sort of next one up and next one up, and again, it was the mode that kind of had to take place because things were moving so fast and just the way it was going. But when we look at it now, we got to do better.
Talk about people getting promoted, like superintendents getting promoted as PMs. So, in the book Good to Great, we talk about getting the right people in the right seats on the bus. And I guess kind of maybe a tip for the next generation, those guys coming up, was like, if you're sitting in a seat that's not the right seat, I think you should speak up. Don't be miserable because, you think you're heading on some path. Like, if you want to be a superintendent in the field and they're trying to get you into the office and you're miserable in the office, say something, speak up. Like, you're only going to hurt yourself and you're going to hurt the company in the long run because they're putting you in a position to fail. And then when you fail, they're going to just be like, what happened, man? You used to be awesome.
Yeah. Worst thing you can do is stay quiet and not ask questions and not seek out the help. That's the worst thing somebody can do because it's going to drag them down and drag the company down. And then, like you're saying, Matt, the performance goes down. And before you know it, now you're burnt out. Right?
You are.
and then you're really stuck because now you can't perform at your other job level either.
Right. So those four, I forget what you call them, 4 pillars?
Well, yeah, they're just sort of 4 energy kind of capacities. So
you want
go
to
ahead.
touch on those real quick? Oh, you just want to touch on those kind
Yeah.
of high level, the executive summary?
We'll go executive summary on it. Yeah, we'll go high level. But what's interesting about these 4 levels, and I know the sort of the intention behind our talk today is to, let's keep it on the localized level of the individual and the performance. But what I would also stress to anybody listening to this, culturally speaking, your organization is made up of a bunch of individual sort of subcultures and then individuals. And so a lot of the theories and concepts we talk about with performance and the kind of culture we want to drive, well, it starts with individuals, and then a group of individuals, then a department of individuals, and then a sort of a layer of individuals. And so that's how we can build up a lot of these qualities. But you can look at your company in the same sort of way through these capacities. What's the physical aspect of our company looking like, the emotional side, the mental side, those sorts of side, our values, our core values. So you can expand it any way you want, but the individual is what we're here to talk about. So, and a lot of the 4 areas is just that we've been kind of living neck up for about the last 10, 15 years. Nothing wrong with that. It's just we've been, the sort of sports psychology, psychology in general, behavioral analysis. A lot of the stuff is very heavy and heady kind of stuff. And it's now time to engage the rest of our faculties and bodies and look at the interconnectedness behind them.
If I can cut you off a second, why do you think for the last 10, 15 years we've been neck up? Is it a cultural thing, or is it just a kind of training, or?
Yeah, I think culturally, I think the technology that was introduced. Well, 20 years ago, we had the real boom of the internet, and that sort of influx of knowledge, access to knowledge, really, gave us that dopamine kick. Just being able to access and understand and recite knowledge that we're doing is a very sort of sticky kind of thing. And so we had a lot of great thought leaders too, and people bringing in new ways of doing things and new theories of doing it. It's just that, like all things human, you can take things too far. You take them just a little too far, and then we got to realize, balance them out a little bit. And so we're good. We're good on knowledge. We can access a lot of knowledge. We can get a lot of knowledge. Now it's time to engage that knowledge and put it to use. We're asking the sort of, the what and why. It should be the where and how. Now it's like we got to get the motion. And that's why I say energy management. It's about, creating that individual energy that turns into organizational kinetic energy. These things aren't, like I said, I'm not saying something that's not there, but if we pause and look at it, it makes a lot of sense for people. We want to create that sort of kinetic energy in our organization. So yeah, I just think we had a lot of access to knowledge, so why not bulk up on it? But it's like anything, you're like sitting there with like a big old cheeseburger belly now. It's like, oh, what do I do with all this knowledge? It's like, all right, now let's get up and walk around a little bit, maybe digest some of it, So, so that brings us to our energy sort of dimensions. It's. I really am all of, awareness. I talk a lot about awareness, and you can't regulate what you're not aware of. So most people do a good job of getting in their own way. And if we can simply just bubble up some awareness, they're going to see some things. They're going to see the reality of it. That's why people actually end up, we talk about change. Well, a lot of change doesn't happen because there's not awareness of either what needs to change, what are the impacts, the consequences if I don't change, those sorts of things. So once you bubble those up, the change happens rather quickly. So it's with these 4 areas, I really wanted to help, business professionals that, use a lot of the same principles of dedication and things like athletes, and they can take stock of where their energy level is at any one time. You go through, you say how, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, okay, where am I? Which ones are low? And then what are the sort of routines I can do right in that moment that can ignite that energy, and I can just have energy on demand. And so again, your off-field performance is not depleting. You don't get off work and you're just drained and you can barely get out of bed the next morning to it. you go right into these what we call routines of oscillation, these routines that allow you to stress and recover without burnout. And so as we kind of talk through some of these, I'll share with you a little bit about, those sorts of routines that anybody can put into practice. It's just, your willingness to do so. So,
you were talking about getting energy on demand, and it made me think back when I had to look it up here. I wrote a note. You were talking about Kobe Bryant last time we talked about how he had a different music playlist for every opponent he had, or something along those lines.
Oh yeah, that's so. In our emotional energy, this is where mistakes happen a lot. So if somebody's making a lot of recurring mistakes, you want to check in with their sort of emotional energy, and look at their, it's amazing when we do eat, whether it's emotional intelligence or we're just sort of looking at things like emotional patience, being able to resist and hold back these automatic responses and get to understand them better. Basically take more control over your emotional operating system. We tend to let that monkey mind go a little bit. But the music thing was cool because and I've always had this too. One of the other things Kobe Bryant and I share is that we both took tap dancing when we were training to become athletes. And, it was about foot speed, right? So in soccer, you want the foot speed. In basketball, very similar movements. But again, you got to have a little bit of rhythm to do that as well. And we were always taught, I was even taught at a young age, and even now, life is just a rhythm. It's just, you're trying to get into that tempo, that frequency. So, that's what we're doing with these energy managements is let's get into a tempo that just you're good. And so we can adjust that tempo, externally and find ways to trigger these sort of emotional cues and these neurological sort of connections. And so we were always taught to find a song that is your tempo for playing, and I would even give that to the youngest players I would train too. When I was coaching semi-pro and even younger, I'd have them come back to me with a song that's about them and their game. So, you could ask yourself as a young professional, what's my tempo? What do I jam to? What when I'm feeling my best, what's that? But Kobe would have different playlists. He realized that sometimes the game called for a different player and required. So think about that when you step on a job site. It's like, well, today we've got such and such that's coming on a site visit, and we're going to have to go through this punch list, and we're going to have to, do it within this tight schedule before we're, taking a drop shipment that's coming off here. It's like, what kind of player needs to show up today? So he would have a playlist that would bring into that. And it would, you could change it. So, that's, what do you jam on the way to work? What are you playing when you get off of work?
If I'm not listening to a podcast or an audiobook or something like that, it's definitely, I have different, when I'm drinking coffee in the morning, headed to work, it's always something upbeat, I feel like, and something to wake me up and pick me up and get me going, get me psyched up for the day, I guess. And then when you're going home, like, you don't want to be rocking out on your way home. Usually something mellow and chill. And
here's a nice little, case study you can do if anybody goes to a gym and you just want to ask people, hey, what are you listening to in your day? There's such a wide range of what people work out to, like just everything. So they got their playlist.
I wonder if it's I wonder if you actually did a case study and actually looked at, like, if you're doing cardio, if it's more of a certain genre, and if you're doing, like, heavy weights, it was more of a certain genre.
Oh yeah, I think there would be. I think there'd be some little bit higher beat tempo on that running. There'd be some metal or some serious percussion going on, some weights. But yeah, he would do it, and on that emotional side too, it's relationships are hugely important. If you're ever feeling like just, taking stock of your internal just sort of emotions and just, building on and saying, oh, today's just feeling kind of iffy or this or that, or I'm feeling a little drained there. Another big secret to do is to just go find those closest to you. Go spend time with people that are close to you. Go talk to a colleague that you enjoy being around and just kind of get your head out of it. On that emotional side, who we allow to come in and kind of be in our energy sort of areas has a huge impact on that. Speaking of songs, I think of that Chris Stapleton song, what are you listening to? where it talks about the importance of, and what you surround yourself with, what kind of stuff is coming in here will have an impact on your emotions one way or the other, positive or negatively. So that's a good message for young guys coming up is, being able to discern who the guys are to stay away from. I mean, this is just like in a sport as well. You get on a team and you start hanging around with the dudes who are like talking when the coach is talking, or they're showing up late, or they're doing that. And don't be shocked when you're viewed that same way. You're surrounding yourself with those. You want to be leading in this company. You want to make it up to past your journeyman. Just keep climbing. Go find those people. Go sit around them at lunch. Go talk to them. So
sadly, it's true. It kind of touches on what Kyle was talking about earlier with if you're struggling with your onboarding paperwork and all that sort of stuff, it's like perception is reality. If you're hanging around with the troublemakers, right, you're going to be classified as it. And then, whenever there's unfortunately, if there's a big layoff and they're looking for people to go, you're at the top of that list too. So that's been an awful place to be.
Matt, you're nailing it. I mean, if there was 3 words that three words, I guess, that stick out to me in construction and just in life in general: respect, expectations, perception. Those 3 things, those 3, just every time, every project I work on, it's a theme that occurs no matter what. There's always things that come up.
So on those 4 areas, I mean, I'm sure the right answers, they're all equal, right? But if you had to what's the most important one, do you think? If somebody were to, you probably need to really concentrate on them all, and it may be different ones at different times.
No, they actually work all together. That's the great thing about them, is that you really don't have to. I will give you a 2-prong. There is a sort of a cadence to it, so where you would start if you had to start from scratch. But I'll also give you what I think is the most important. So I'll give you that one first. The most important is that spiritual energy, without a doubt. And this, because it's the most difficult. That's just the way it goes. It's one that requires time. It requires being honest. It requires deep understanding, journaling and looking back at your business experiences or your interactions. It's a tough one to deal with because sometimes you don't have the answers, and it's not a short game. It's not like you just come up with the answers, sitting there for a minute or two. I mean, but this is what got shooken up during a lot of the pandemic and everything is, it's when everything gets shaken up, you sometimes lose where you're at, your navigating system. So, that one's the most important. However, it's very hard to get to that place where you can think and you can engage that kind of conversation internally with yourself, where you can ask those questions honestly. So that's where we would go back, and I would say you start with the physical. The physical is the foundational. So I'll give an example. My morning routines, I hit all of these energy zones. So I wake up, first thing I do is, some of that cold therapy. I'll get out of bed, no blue light. Don't, if it ain't to shut off the alarm, there's not looking at the phone. You go splash cold water right on your face, wake up those neurons right in that brainstem. Just get it. I used to do ice baths as a player. I'm not doing them now as an adult. I'm scarred for life from that. So I'll just do the cold water in the face. That'll wake me up. Then I put cold water right in my right in my belly. I go ahead and drink a glass of cold water and get that going right through the system on that. Then I start oiling up my joints. I move around. I move my shoulders. I move my knees. I move my back. And I go ahead and I just physically get things going a little bit. Then I go and I take time to center myself on the emotional side. I might go meditate. I might go write some affirmations. I might go journal a little bit. I definitely read some more. All this stuff, and then I go do a workout. I mean, all this stuff is just engaging you, ready to show up, full of energy for when that day hits. You feel, but as you work out, if you've ever gone to work out and you had a good workout, you come out of that gym or wherever you're at feeling really good about yourself in a sort of way. I feel ready. I feel good. I got a good pump on. Good. Now I feel somehow more locked in and able to receive new knowledge or be able to tackle the tasks as they come at and things like that. And when I'm doing that and I'm handling my business and getting everything good, it's I feel good about myself. I feel good about, my direction and my purpose. So they play off of each other. But the physical, the physical is foundational. I meet with a lot of companies and people who say, Alex, come in and we want to work on time management. We want to work on focus and we want to work on this. And I'm like, tell me about your rest. Tell me about your nutrition. Tell me about, your brain optimization. Tell me about, do you get enough water in the day? They look at me like, you're asking me these simple questions. And I'm just saying to myself, if you can't do some of the fundamentals, it's going to be very hard for us to get to the areas we need to get to. So that's what I call that first one, that physical area. That's just mastering the fundamentals. And in the construction industry, well, you wouldn't be shocked. Things like rest are just overlooked. And guys are traveling all the time, going to this site, to this project. And we just give no thought to what actually happens when we allow our bodies to rest. How can we set up ourselves for our body, to do its natural detoxing, to make the right connections that are going to allow us to optimize in the morning, to get rid of wasted and junk and thoughts in this way and that way. So, neuroscience has helped us see a lot of that where we're at today, but I'll pause there. That physical side of it is really where we got to start. And, we even talk about posture. I'll even work with guys and I watch them come out of a meeting or come out of a safety break or something, and just the posture is down. It's just I'll correct people on their posture. They have no idea what that, the messages you send with body language and what that energy you can simply do by just pulling your shoulder. I don't even care if you don't like the information you were just given. It's about the energy you're putting off here. It's you can disagree with somebody and still put off an energy of teamwork, collaboration, positivity, energy going on, So we get down to it.
I find myself too, the days whenever I, have an office day, right? And I'm just basically literally just hunched over my desk on the computer all day long. And I just feel like crap that day.
Oh, yeah. You need every 90 to 120 minutes is the standard for where you got to get up and move your body around. If you don't do it at about 90 to 120 minutes, you're missing a clarity break, a physical kind of break that is just essential for you. Again, we talk about energy on demand. These are small things that if you can just consciously remind yourself to implement at the right times, you're just cruising past people, man.
Well, and in agreement with what Alex is saying about focusing on the physical part of things. If I find myself getting stressed out, I have to get up and I got to go move around a little bit. I need to go for a walk. I need to go clear my head. Just getting up and moving for a period of time just helps me refocus, realign my energy with where it needs to be so I can actually keep making progress. Because there's times when something happens and I'm flustered and I can't even focus on anything. I just say, all right, it's time for me to stand up for a little bit. I've been staring at this computer screen for too long.
And that's what I love about our industry too. Is a lot of times you're on the job site too. So whenever you need to get up, there's always something you can go walk out there and go look at, and so something cool to go see or something fresh.
Oh yeah. Some of the, it's some guys on the site. It's hard. It's when we look at the physical thing, side of it too. It's good to see the hydration, especially in Texas where I'm at, it can get very hot, in those times. And so this is when I talk about it being a safety issue, I really mean it. And it's, it is, we're looking after the well-being of our people. And, I can't tell you how many studies are done that poor choices, poor decision-making happens at these times in the day. And it happens for these reasons. We know this stuff. And it's, the physical side of it, just nutrition. Guys are on the road all the time, getting a healthy meal, what we put in. What we now know from neuroscience about our gut being like a second brain, and it's not just some sort of we input, the right type of fuel, and the body does something with it. It actually has a neuro connection directly to your brain. So they're talking. Your gut is talking to your brain instantly about these things. So now I get it. Us not having all the evidence and not having the full picture, and that being the reason why we don't want to invest in these kind of things. What's the excuse now? It's if you're making another excuse now, oh, now I can see the evidence, I still don't want to do it. It's then you never wanted to do it. It's then don't sign up for this thing called leadership. Don't sign up for this thing, called business athlete. It's not for you.
Have you read that book, Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules? I think it's 12 Rules of Life.
I think I got it here somewhere. Yeah.
But he talks about, one of the chapters, he talks about, basically be somebody. If you were to look after somebody, be the somebody you would look after. And essentially the punchline of it is, for whatever reason, people don't want to take care of themselves. They'll go out of their way to make sure their dog gets their pill every day, but they won't take their own pill every day. And it's silly. And, I mean, I'm guilty of it myself. I know, but I had Whataburger for lunch today. I mean, I was busy, and it was easy. And
oh, man, yeah, so good caveat on the sort of, when I work with professionals, it's, I understand a little apprehension and anxiety, when anybody says go do some training or here's some leadership development or, hey, this is where we're going to look at developing and improving ourselves. But I've never asked anybody to make all these changes in one day, and I never asked them to make them all at the same time. It's about being lifelong learners and having that sort of long-term vision but short-term execution. Like, we're gonna get to each energy level. We're gonna, everybody comes into the stream at different places, so there's not just one way of hitting these 4 areas, and it's this. You're going to start to develop and be a craftsman of your own life, just like you develop those technical skills for being the best, engineer, the best electrician, the best, HVAC, whatever it is. Like, you can apply those same technical aspects to your own life and become that sort of craftsman. And so we shouldn't look at this thing as a zero-sum thing. You're either going to be, some high end. I wasn't even one of, when I'm a professional athlete because I was paid to play professionally, right? But there was a whole number of guys above me that were fine. They didn't have to go have second and third jobs and have to get bought, sold, and traded around this sort of stuff. So, even in there were guys that were doing it way above my level, and I just aspire to do that. But there's a confidence with saying, just keep moving forward with where you are at. Focus on you. Just what we were talking about, right? Like, it's like Seabiscuit, that's why horses wear the blinders on the side, is so that they can focus on themselves. There you go. There's another sports reference, horse racing. We do this all day.
We're closing on an hour here, so we'll kind of wrap up in a second. But if there's somebody listening to this right now who is burned out, tired of what they're doing, and they say, I don't even know where to start. Where do they? What's step one? Is it get your physical stuff right?
Yeah, I mean, step one would be just to, to be honest, if you're saying that, then you're at step one, right? The acknowledgement that something's off. You're so good. Hey, awesome, right? Then I would go and I would, if you're really at that and you really have no gauge of which one of these, it's just, man, something is really off here. I would go get the guidance of somebody that you can either entrust or somebody you do, a family member, to kind of talk it through. Start there first, right? Maybe somebody will give you that quick one right there. I mean, they're probably telling you it already, but again, you haven't said it to yourself, so you're not hearing it the same way. So now that you've said it and acknowledged it, it's like, now I can hear people, what they're saying, and pick it up. But the physical is where I would start. Just start there and go out. How many times have people said their best ideas come from when they're not doing the work that's right in front of them? We stir things up, we get in our own way, we make it a lot more. And when people are in this mode, they just sort of kick. It's like walking through a river. You're kicking up all the soot. So, of course, you can't see clearly. You got to find a way to just be still for a moment and let that soot subside so you can now navigate and look. And most of the times that's just sort of get up out of your desk, go for a walk. I have people clean up their workspace. Like, you'd be surprised how many times, like, that is the most effective coaching session I've ever had. It's just telling somebody and, like, having them show me, like, clean up your workspace. Like, that's it, right? Like, so some of the very simple things, but it's hard to do if you're really just kicking stuff up. So I would say just give yourself a break. Take a deep breath. Patience, one thing at a time. Go find a way to get moving and quiet things down so you can take stock of some of these things. And then, just get with somebody. There's a lot of good ways to do this. But if you don't we talked about being uncomfortable earlier. If you don't take a step, then don't be upset, when you haven't moved,
That's a good ending right there. Alex, if people want to get in touch with you or work with you, how can they find you?
Get in touch and work with me. Why would they want to after hearing all the stuff I just talked about, right? Like, no way, oh man, I'm not ready now.
I'm gonna have to go back and listen to this thing myself because I got to clean up my workspace. I've got to start working out in the morning again. I've got to hit the no phone in the morning. Like everything you said, I'm failing.
It took me a long time. I still try to do it. It took me a long time to get to the routines I have now, and those are there. But I can now come back and share those with everybody. So try them on, and you do that. So you'll get it. Next time you and I check in, I'm going to ask you about those because you put yourself out there now. So,
damn it.
But people can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm on there. Instagram, my name, Biz Athlete on TikTok. I like doing those videos now. It's a cool medium to get some stuff. You guys got really good content too. So following you guys. Intuitogroup.com is our website, and they can always, just reach out to me at alex@intuitogroup.com. I'm always down for a conversation, to listen, to hear what's going on. And if there's any way, that's what I did on the soccer field. I was the guy in the middle. I took great pride in assisting people make their goals. So that's how it translates into coaching now. I get my kicks out of seeing other people score goals. So just
so cool.
Reach out.
Very cool.
Appreciate it, Alex. We'll have to do this again, man. We'll have to. You're so well-rounded. Every time I've talked to you, we've had a completely different conversation about a completely different topic. So we'll have to talk about the pendulum next time.
Yeah, man, you guys are awesome. Appreciate it, and man, I just like what you guys are doing and who you're helping, and you're just honest and real about it. So you just keep it going, and anytime, man, I'll come talk with you guys anytime.
Thanks a lot, Alex.
Well, I found that us being real about it's giving other people permission to be real about it too. I was chatting with somebody earlier today, actually, texting back and forth, and I think just putting myself out there, me saying, hey, I got to clean up my desk, just that I'm not perfect. Like everyone wants to go on social media and look like they're perfect, but we're all sucking at something. We're all struggling, and so whenever you can put yourself out there, it gives them the permission to do the same. So anyway, we'll talk later. Thanks, man.
All right, thanks, guys.